Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 23 of My Hero Academia Season 6. And we're nearing the end of the season, if you can believe it. Isn't that crazy? But we're nearing the end of the season. There's still so much to go. And I'm really excited for this episode because when we last left off, Deku had decided that he didn't need anybody anymore. He didn't want anybody to worry about him, didn't want to be a bother, and so he's going to go off and do everything on his own and face all for one and not get anyone else in danger. And Class 1A is like, no, we're not going to let you do that because no one person can do it alone, right? Even All for One, who has been using people and has seemingly been by himself, has actually not been by himself at all. He's been using people this entire time under the guise that he's doing it all himself, right? But he's had to have a lot of other people to steal quirks from and to use in his own means, and the doctor and everything else. Like, he's not been a solo man, but he wants to make it seem like he is, right? And Deku has tried to do the exact same thing, only for the opposite reason. And it's just not possible. And Deku is solely convinced that he doesn't need anybody in order to be a hero and save the day. He can do it all himself. And we know, as the audience watching, that's not possible. Class 1A knows that's not possible. A Hero Society knows it's not possible. But here we are. So I'm really excited to see this episode and to see how it's adapted and to see what all we get, right? We have 2 more episodes left. This episode and the next. It's crazy, right? So I'm excited to see what we're going to find out. But I've been gone on a trip this last several days, and so I got home and put my stuff down and recorded some things, and I'm like, I am ready for My Hero Academia. So we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to dive right in to episode 23 and see what we get, y'all. But we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this. I've been really looking forward to talking about the contents of this episode all season because I figured we were going to get to this point by the end. I wasn't sure. So we'll talk in spoiler corner just about like other things of where the next episode could fall in line with. But man, I have waited for Bakugo's apology to Deku for a long time in the manga, since reading those chapters, and they finally happened, and I was like, and the way they adapted it was just beautiful. These chapters were really good in the manga. I was really happy with. There's a couple things in here I would definitely want to talk about with these as we go through. But yeah, Deku just going through the whole thing about how he doesn't want to be a bother. He doesn't want to drag anyone else down with him. He doesn't want to be responsible for hurting anyone. He doesn't want to have to protect he's protecting his friends by not being there, right? By letting them live their lives, and he'll go off and fight all for one by himself. But the thing about it is that they're all like, we're heroes like you, Deku. We understood. We're not innocent civilians. That's kind of the big thing about this episode, is that the Class 1A, they're like, we all signed up for the same thing. We are not civilians, Deku. We are heroes like you. We know what we signed up for. We know that we're getting into something that is very deep, very dangerous, and that our lives are potentially at stake. But we all agreed that this is what we want to do. And so as much as we appreciate you trying to help, Deku, you need help as well. You can't do this alone. And Deku has convinced himself that with his quirks and everything, that he doesn't need them. And as this episode shows, he does eventually run out of steam. It's not guaranteed he's going to be able to keep going without fail forever. He runs out of steam, is able to be captured by his classmates. So it's like, Deku. But he's so persistent. And that is the one thing that Iida notes. He's like, once Deku makes up his mind, once Midoriya makes up his mind about anything, he sticks to it. And Izuku will not go down without a fight. And these chapters of the manga are so great. They're so fast paced though. I feel like this episode went by so quickly, right? But God, some of the animation at the beginning of this, like when he slowly picks up the mask off the ground, and he just, the way they drew Deku in this entire episode, he just looks so sad. And the moment the mask flies off, like the voice acting was incredible in this episode. Like Deku's voice actor, Bakugo's voice actor, my heart like fell to the floor for them. But I also, like, someone else noted it in the comments. I can't take the credit for it because they noted in the comments as he says, "I'm fine. You're not, Deku." But as he says it, like, Black Whip is literally holding him up. Like, as he moves, he's so exhausted that Black Whip is physically holding him up so he can move. I'm like, that little attention to detail is just so good. But I'm just like, Deku, you're not fine. And he's just like, I just gotta keep going. And the way that he puts, like he has the claws on the gloves and the claws on his feet, and he looks like a wild rabbit. I love that his whole, now that I can see animated the fourth user's, like, quirk, or the third user's quirk, it just looks like a rabbit jumping is what that quirk looks like animated. And it's like, oh, that makes so much more sense now because he has the rabbit motif, right? And Bakugo. I'll be honest, Bakugo, I was always kind of lukewarm about Bakugo's character up until the events of season 6. Like, I was always, in seasons 1 and 2, I was like, Bakugo, you're ridiculous. And I was not about his character at all. Season 3, when he got kidnapped, and then afterwards when he, like, kind of pours his heart out a little bit to Deku about, you know, feeling guilty about All Might losing his powers because of him, that was a turning point where I was like, oh no, Bakugo has some layers to him and he's got some depth. I'm like, no, I kind of like Bakugo's character. We'll see where this goes. And then season 4, Bakugo didn't have much to do in season 4 because of Overhaul. Overhaul's battle with Midoriya needed to be Deku's battle. Bakugo and Shoto are conveniently plot convenienced into the exams during that season, so they can't help out Deku, so Deku can kind of have his moment of internal and physical growth. So that's a whole thing. And then season 5, Bakugo starts to kind of come out of his shell a little bit more because he's like, okay, he's around the classmates, he gets in the band, he helps out with Deku as well, but Bakugo kind of starts to get behind the scenes saying like, okay, what All Might are you not telling us about Deku that we should know about? And there's like the seeds planted in season 5 with Bakugo's character that we see bloom in this season. They start to blossom. Like the seeds were planted in season 3, and seasons 4, they kind of are left. We put some fertilizer on them. Season 5, they start to sprout a little bit, and now they're starting to bloom. And season 6, like him jumping in front, not knowing he was moving and jumping in front of Shigaraki's attack to save Deku, that was one thing. But this moment where he apologizes to Deku and bears his soul and everything that's led him to this point, that is the moment I loved Bakugo's character. I fell in love with Bakugo after the events of this episode because I was like, yes, he finally admits, like, this is like the most groundbreaking thing with his character is admitting to Deku, I was projecting all of my insecurities on you for years because he couldn't figure out how did somebody without a quirk who should have been the weakest person in the room somehow manage to turn it around and spin it to where they felt like they were stronger. And Bakugo's like, I was so insecure with myself compared to you. I projected all of my frustrations on you by bullying you. And then you, of all people, end up with this power. And you've always been better than me, whether it's been physically through your quirk or whether it's just been emotionally and mentally through your personality. And he's like, and I've always been jealous of you. And now he's like, I realize that I want to be your friend. And it's like, oh. And Deku's face as he's apologizing is just, what? Like it's sensory overload for Deku. And he's like, I can't. And I love Bakugo's character from it. I also love how the middle card, like, put the full hero name up there. It was so funny. It was like murder god, explosion, dynamite. It's like the whole damn thing. But man, some of the animation is so good. But yeah, Bakugo being like, you all might want to be. And that's the thing, tying back, like, are you able to smile? Because that's been All Might's thing. Like, I thought we were imitating him. And Deku can't smile. And the whole time reading the manga, you just know that he wants to cry because he's just at his wit's end. And this episode was like a big old callback to everything leading up to this point. Like Iida's whole thing in season 2 was Stain and Shoto and Deku. Like Iida noting how stubborn Deku is. That of course Deku's stubborn as can be, and once he makes his mind about something, it's just that's the way it's gonna be. And I love how Iida's animated in this. Iida looks so damn good in this episode. It was Iida's time to shine, right? And Bakugo, he's like, you're a damn nerd. Combining all these quirks, only a nerd would do that, right? And this, all the callbacks. And Deku, like, using the 6th and the 4ths. And Bakugo saying, you're going to try to run away without even talking. And for Bakugo to say that, because that's something Bakugo can relate to, he's like, no, I get it. Bakugo's like, I've ran away without talking. I know what that's like. And Bakugo knows what the real emotion is inside that we're not privy to, right? That the others may not understand as much as Bakugo does, right? I love it. But then, like, all of them up against him, like Koda using his ability, Sero using his ability, like them all connecting, like even going back to Ojiro, to Jiro, to all of them. And of course, we kind of start out with like the ones that Deku can easily like flake away. Like he can flake the birds away, he can flick the tape away, he can get away. I like that Jiro is able to use her speakers to kind of to talk to him. It's kind of like Lady Nagant using the microphones and the bullet. It's a way to convey that exposition to us, the audience, as well as make it work in the actual story, right? And Deku's like, I just can't do it. He's like, I don't want you all. He's like, you'll be taken by all for one, and I don't want that to happen. And so, and of course they hear it now, and they're like, look, we get this is a tough battle. And Deku's like, I just don't want anybody else to get hurt. And then Dark Shadow getting involved. I like that Sugar Rush is like, I'm not gonna let you use my food coloring if you don't stop. And Deku's like, it's fine. Like Deku is a literal embodiment of the dog with the cup and the fire saying, this is fine, right? I also like that Togiyama was like, yes, this place has much darkness and shadows. This would be perfect for us. It was perfect, right? And then, yeah, Momo coming in with the created sleep device. Like, the fact that they all try so hard to stop him, and he still breaks through all of them. And even Denki, when Kaminari gets in there and he's like, hey, he's like, look, this isn't just about, you know, being a hero. It's like, you're our friend. We may have different personalities and interests, but you're still my friend. He's like, I don't want you to leave us. Like, that's such a, God, it's such a good moment. And then Deku just, and we call back to season 3 where Shoji's like, hey, you know, you said that we all had to work together. Let's do that. And Deku just, he's like, I like that Kaminari says, hey, let's go take a bath. You're kind of dirty. I like that Kaminari calls around. He's like, hey, by the way, you kind of stink. Let's go take a bath. You need it. You're kind of like really grungy right now, Deku. Your suit needs to be cleaned. And then they're like, this is the power of one for all. Like him just jutting away. And you can't see Deku's face at this moment, but you just know that he's crying or about to cry. And the voice actor, it was so good. But I had to laugh because they actually kept the translation. And I am losing it because Mineta. And then Deku's like, I know you're worried about me. And I know you're worried from the bottom of your hearts. He's like, I know. He's like, because Danger Sense is telling me that you guys aren't trying to hurt me. He's like, but I want you to get away from me because he's like, I just can't. And I love Shoto. What I really wanted was for Shoto, when he said the whole part about crying, right? When he said the whole part about crying, what I wanted Shoto to bring up is the fact that Deku told Shoto it was okay for heroes to cry. And that heroes do that sometimes. And I wanted him to bring that up in this episode, but he doesn't. I kept thinking he was going to go there. But Shoto's like, what are we, chopped liver? Like, come on. We're trying to help you too. You have a responsibility the same as we do. And then Tsuyu gets in there. I'm glad that Kirishima gets to say something to Deku because him telling Endeavor that he wanted to. That's good. Endeavor came there to get the bad guy. And Hawk's trying to like sneak in there. It's like, Hawks, we know you like to butt in, but it's like, stand. And I like that Endeavor's like, look, let these kids sort it out. Deku's not going to hurt him. He's going to be fine. This needs to happen. Just let them have their moment. I like the Endeavor. It's the best thing Endeavor's done all season is let them have their moment to bring their friend back. I'm like, for someone like Endeavor that doesn't seem to have that many friends, I'm glad Endeavor was self-aware enough to let this go down the way that it did. Right? But then, man, Shoto, he's like, we can do this. We can work together. But Deku keeps going back to that image of all for one, right? But the part about Mineta that got me, right, is that Mineta ends up using the sticky balls to grab Deku, okay? And Mineta says, I never thought your power was cool or anything. So it's like, it's not like we're jealous of you. It's not like we're envious. We never thought your power was cool or anything. But then they kept the translation. Mineta says that what made me fall for you in the okay, I've been waiting to talk about this for a while because this is a thing. When this chapter came out in the manga, the translation was like this. It said, what made me fall for you and like you was when you were sweating bullets and trembling with fear, because it was something that Mineta could relate to when we opened up a path together. How you were back then. He's like, we worked together. The funny thing is, they kept the translation in this episode, which is amazing. Everybody at the time when this chapter came out in the manga was having a high-speed come apart because they were like, has Mineta had a crush on Deku this whole time? Is Mineta gay? What is this? Like, it was this big thing, this big ordeal. Everybody was like questioning Mineta's sexuality, whether he's loved Deku from the start, whether the ultimate ship in My Hero Academia was actually Deku and Mineta all along. And they play it down in this episode, or when we actually see it animated, it looks much more legit than it was at the time. But I remember I was freaking out about it because, yeah, the way that Mineta says it, it sounds like he had a thing for Deku. Now, when you watch it animated like this, it does not come across that way. The translation just happens to be what it was. But in the manga, everybody was really wondering, and I was like, I was on board with it. I had popcorn. I was like, yes, let Deku and Mineta's ship thrive. Let this crack ship gain wings. I was really living for it. But it's just funny that they did not change the translation. I'm actually all about that. But yeah, Mineta brings up a good point. He's like, back in season 1, before you realized all the nuances about all for one, or about one for all, we were working together and we were side by side. And it wasn't a big deal then. So why can't we do that now? And Deku's like, it's different. Which it is. It is very different. We know much more about the situation now, God, than back in season 1. But I love that Ochako comes down. She's like, and Ochako makes it seem like she's like, she thinks that Deku is going to be humiliated if we all have to be people that he protects, but that's not really the case, right? It's just, she's like, no. She's like, you're thinking about it all wrong. And for Deku to push Ochako away, I'm like, she's been like your biggest friend since day one. She was like your first friend at UA. And for you to push her away, it's like, But yeah, the thing of it is, we were talking about it in the manga, Deku knows everybody's weakness. Like, he collected notebooks of it because he's a damn nerd, as Bakugo would say. So he knows how to fight back against them. But I love the callback to season 3 in making the slingshot to go get him. And Shoto's made the ramp of ice, right? Now, where they found train tracks, I'm guessing Momo created them. I'm guessing Momo created the train tracks. And I like that Mina used the acidity to make the slickum, right? And then Bakugo and Shoto working together to launch them up with Iida. I like that the goop hides where you can't see Iida right away. You just see Bakugo and Shoto. You don't see Iida from the start. It's great. It's a nice callback to season 3. And I just love that they all kind of fall off one by one. Ochako gives them the gravity powers. Shoto is like, we can't keep up, and he kind of is the next to fall off. And then Bakugo saying, I want to. No, I need to talk to you. It's like, if you're a Bakugo and Deku shipper, have you been living this season? I feel like you have been, because there's been so many good moments. But Bakugo saying, no, first you need to get caught. And it's not. And also, this is something about Bakugo's character as well. Again, we talk about character growth. Bakugo in seasons past would have been like, I can get Deku. I've got this. You all sit down. Let me handle this. But Bakugo actually lets someone else get the credit. So he actually propels Iida forward of all characters. That's such a significant thing with Bakugo, I feel. Like, that's a huge thing with his character. It's so good. He's like, I'm going to wait till this guy, his body built for speed, goes and gets you. And man, the animation on Iida, because in the manga it was good, but the animation of Iida, like, firing towards Deku and losing all of his armor along the way, and he's just like dangling with his like mouthful back, like, oh my god, the president. It's so good. Like, his armor and everything falls off. And he's like, Midorima, you're always going ahead of me. That's why we've got to catch up. And then him grabbing Deku's hand, like, Horikoshi loves to draw him some hand holding and do the symbolic representation behind it, but it just feels good every time. It feels good every time. And then I love that he just swings around. That the animation of Midorima the animation of Iida and Bakugo and Midoriya in this was amazing. It was so freaking good. He's like, that's why we've got to challenge you. And Deku at this point is just out of energy and he just looks so pitiful. Deku just looks so pitiful and distraught where he's like, I just don't want anybody to get hurt. Why won't you leave me alone? And they're all like, no, that's not how this works. You should know better. If there's one thing that Izuku Midoriya needs right now. And I like that it's not just a friend. I like that it's not just that. The second user says it would be those who will, with the same intent, at the same pace, continue to run alongside him. Like, they're not going to let him down. They're going to be with him, right? And God, I love that Iida's like, we know what it's like for you to meddle when you don't need to. But he's like, but meddling where you don't need to is the essence of being a hero, right? Like him crying, Iida with his tears. Oh, I like that part so good. They drew him so well in this. And that gets Deku, the essence of being a hero, because it all hits Deku at once. Like, just the feelings of Deku just being like, are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. If I hadn't read this in the manga, I think I would have cried this episode, because it was just, if I didn't know what was coming and I hadn't already read this and known, and I was too excited in this episode to cry because I was so excited of what was to come. I was like, no, I can't. It's so good. So, but, and then this point is the point where Deku cries. I love that shot of Iida with the leg and the half thing. It's just now hitting me what that is. It's Iida with the engines coming off his leg. That is actually a really good shot of Iida. They did damn good on him. Tenya, Iida, Ingenium. And then Katsuki Bakugo, Great Explosion, Murder God, Dynamite. And Deku. What a pair, right? What a pair. But then Deku crying, saying he has to shake him off, but he has no strength left. Ochako like letting them land, and then Kirishima. I like that Kirishima is the one to grab him. Iida, again, looks great, even as he's falling. I like that Kirishima takes this time to be like, hey, Deku, because honestly, Kirishima and Deku have not had a lot of time together in this series. It's funny, they really haven't. Kirishima's kind of gone off and like had moments with Mina, moments with Bakugo, moments with other characters, but Midoriya is not one of them. So he's like, hey, I know we don't know each other that well, but he's like, I was so moved by this thing that happened. He's like, I'm going to tell you my backstory real quick since I have no other way to connect to you, right? He's like, back in the past, someone the same age as me rushed out in order to save his friend. And that was you, wasn't it? Yeah, he's like, so see, even though you don't think we have a connection, we really do. And even though you don't think you've influenced me, you have. So what do we do about that, right? I love that. He's like, it doesn't matter if it's a special power or whatever. He's like, we're still going to be there. He's like, if you think the answer back then is the same for us now, we're going to be there for you. And then everybody's showing up. And Deku's just like, I can't go back to the way things were. And that's when Bakugo shows up and just bears his soul And it's the most amazing thing where he's like, do you know what I said when I got stabbed? And of course, Deku's like, no, my mind was like in a totally other different place. He says, don't try to win by yourself. But he's like, but there was more to that. He's like, my body moved on my own. And he's like, I looked down on you. And when we go back and see the moment of them as kids and Bakugo's like trying to act all smug and everything, he's like, I looked down on you because we were quirkless. He's like, but you never let it faze you. He's like, and just seeing Deku being isolated. And the thing about it is, we see Deku isolated like we have in the past, but now we get Bakugo staring at him and Bakugo being like, this kid is so disadvantaged, but he doesn't let it get him down. He's like, I'm blessed with this amazing quirk, and I doubt myself. Like who's the stronger one here, you or me? And that's the moment Bakugo starts to doubt himself even more. He's like, you were obviously way behind me, but I felt like you were way ahead of me. And the moment Deku reaches out his hands to help Bakugo. Like, that just is so sweet, right? And then what I love about this is we have, in the manga, it was so beautiful because we saw Kid Deku looking like a mess, like he is as an adult, a young adult. And then we see Bakugo. And then as the scenes change, we see them grow up and we see how their mindsets have changed, Bakugo specifically. But the voices change too. Oh, this was just, it was such a good adaptation. I want to go rewatch it now. And he's like, I didn't want to see you. And I didn't want to accept you. And that idea of seeing people and accepting them is something that you can transition and carry over into like the Endeavor and Toya situation of seeing us, about Shigaraki seeing and accepting, about Spinner being seen and accepted. Like, the idea of being seen and accepted is a huge symbolic theme in My Hero Academia. And Bakugo just lays it out beautifully in this moment. And so he's like, that's why I bullied you, to get away from you. He's like, just like how you're trying to get away from us now because you don't want to accept our help and because you don't want to accept the danger that comes with that. He's like, I didn't want to accept you back then, and that's why I pushed you away, because I didn't want to admit it. Yeah. He's like, I tried to feel superior by rejecting you. And we know that's not what Deku's doing in this moment, but Bakugo's like, this is just what it feels like. I was always losing to you. And then we see them in middle school, right? And then we see them in high school. He's like, after getting to UA, not a single thing went the way I wanted it to. Yeah, everything since season 1, Bakugo had all these plans. And the moment they entered UA, the moment Deku got All Might's power, it all changed. And it did not go the way he thought it would. And for Bakugo to be so soft-spoken during all this, to be so quiet, every day I was made to feel how strong you were and how weak I was. And Deku's like, what the hell? And then he looks up and he's like, it's not something that'll work itself out by saying it out loud, but that's how I really feel. And Deku's like, are you kidding? You're springing this life-changing apology on me now when I'm at my weakest? But that seems very Bakugo, right? And then he bows. I'm sorry for everything. For Bakugo from season 1 being a feral hot mess to this moment where he apologizes to Deku. Oh. You kidding me? You kidding me? And Deku's just like, what the hell? He says, everything that you've done after inheriting One for All has been ideal. You've done nothing wrong. And that's kind of the thing Bakugo gets at. He's like, everything you've been doing up until this point has been the right thing, but everything's just kind of worked out for you. Like, if you needed something to happen, you found out a strategy to make it work. You faced the bad guys, you won against them. Like, everything conveniently has worked out. And this is the first time when you've hit a wall and you have to get over it and you've been struggling. He's like, that's just part of it. You're gonna struggle, but he's like, it's not the end of the world. He's like, you're treating it as if it is when it's not. He's like, you've done nothing wrong up until this point, but we have to move past the ideal. He's like, right now you're unsteady because you're facing unease for the first time. He's like, there's a wall you can't just overcome with ideals. He's like, we'll take care of things that you can't. And Bakugo's like, look, everybody hits those walls. He's like, I've hit those walls. There's just some things you can't just do with your own ideology alone. It just takes more than that. And he's like, there's going to be stuff that you can't take care of that we can. And that's what we're going to do. In order to surpass the ideal, we need to save you, the refugees at UA, and all the people in the city. And for Bakugo to be so eloquent and just laying it all out on the line like this, I mean, what else could we ask for? Like, this is the definition of a character arc and growth. And Deku's just like, you've already surpassed me. You've already far surpassed me. And he says that, and the moment he starts to fall and we get the animation of Bakugo's foot, like, just doing that against the water, I was done. I was like, nope, we're good. We're solid. This is amazing. Great adaptation of him just catching him. And everybody just, I love how solemn Shoto looks, and like all of them just looking at Deku, and Ochako being like, okay, this is what we gotta do. And then I love that Shoji has Deku on his back. I forget, if you didn't think Black Hole had a face, surprise, she has a face. It's a woman, she has a face. I feel like they made this so nonchalant in the anime. In the manga, this was a huge deal. I remember everybody was like, oh my god, Black Hole is a woman, has a face. This is it, right? Because in season 1, it was just a black hole. It was sucking it in. So yeah, I feel like the anime did not like make this have any surprise fanfare. But if you forgot about Black Hole and was like, oh wait, they had an actual human appearance. Yes, they do. And we get to see UA, the security system, as basically surrounding the city, making it this like little mini fortress of solitude, right? I love it. I love how cool and industrial and intense it looks, right? And then, of course, Deku's like, I can't go back in there because of all the people standing outside. And the problem is, the thing about it is that Horikoshi does with the people in this situation is that it's not unrealistic at all. The people in this are acting very realistically, for better or worse. They're acting exactly like a group of civilians would, right? And we've probably all seen groups like this as well. And Deku, I like that. He looks so sad. He's like the saddest piece of broccoli. Deku's just like, and he like turns to leave, and Ochako's like, oh, you ain't leaving, honey. We'll have things to say. You're going in UA. Just you wait. The character growth on Bakugo alone is just absolutely stellar. And all of UA is with him. And now the ED makes more sense because it's been detailing him like growing up. It's all leading to this moment. Love it. Love it, love it, love it, right? This was such a good episode. And this whole season has been very well paced, very connected, very strong animation-wise, especially compared to previous seasons. But I'm pretty excited for the next episode. So I still have some spoilers I do want to talk about before we end the discussion completely, but I hope y'all enjoyed this reaction discussion. This episode was great. I loved it. I'm excited to talk with some spoilers with y'all, but if you're not sticking around for that, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back again really soon with more My Hero Academia. The Mineta thing was great. I'm glad they kept the translation. I fell for you. I'm glad. I can't wait for the anime onlys to be like, wait, did he say fall for you? I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it to be like, yes, the Mineta crack ship exists. It's here. I wish we had more time with it, but we'll see if in future episodes if they show us any scenes. But I did have a few things I want to note in the spoiler discussion. So next week we're going to have Ochako having her moment. I feel like that's actually a good place to end the season on, is Ochako having her moment to speak up for Deku, because that's kind of been a theme with her this whole time, is who saves the heroes when they need saving, and she is going to provide an answer to that. So I'm excited for that. That's going to be fun. I feel like that's a good place to end the season, is getting Deku into UA, and then we will be gearing up for All for One, for the final battle, all of that business. We'll be gearing up for that next season. A good place to stop. I think, honestly, this season has been pretty cohesive all the way through. And I think this is going to be a great place to end the season and it feel like a whole season finale. Right? I'm actually pretty excited about it. But I want to make note of a couple things that I noticed in this episode that are actually pretty interesting. Obviously, I like the fact that we tie back to season 2 in Stain with Iida's character because Stain is going to be prevalent in the next season. So it's a nice little callback getting Iida involved. I thought that was pretty genius on Horikoshi's part. Tying back to all the different seasons was great. But here's the thing. When we see Endeavor show up to pick up the villain, right? Kirishima is interesting because Kirishima makes sense that he's there with the villain for Endeavor to pick up because Kirishima, oddly enough, out of most of our Class 1A people, Kirishima has the least relationship with Deku. He really doesn't have much of a relationship with Deku at all. Not really. He has more of a relationship with Bakugo than anybody. So it makes sense narratively to have Kirishima wait with the villain because he doesn't have much to say to Deku. Here's the thing. Invisible Girl and Ayami stayed back, and they're the traitors. Invisible Girl makes sense because she, like Kirishima, has really no interaction with Deku. She has nothing tying him to her. So her staying back with Kirishima makes a lot of sense, right? But in hindsight, Ayami had the whole thing with the cheese. The whole situation of Deku and the cheese. Ayami had things to say. And I remember in the manga people being like, why didn't Deku and Ayami have a moment? They're like, where was that? They're like, did they just think since we've already talked about it, we didn't need to bring it back up? And then when we found out that Ayami is one of the traitors, it was like, oh, that was like Horikoshi giving us the biggest red flag, being like, oh, look at Invisible Girl and Ayami. They're not talking about Deku, but it was interesting because at the time, nobody really suspected it because we had been led to believe that there was one mole, one traitor out of all of UA. So seeing Kirishima, who no one would guess is a traitor, next to Invisible Girl that nobody would guess was a traitor, and Ayami, who people were like, oh, well, there's 3 there. Not suspicious at all, right? So that was actually really genius on Horikoshi's part that he doesn't have Ayami or Invisible Girl speak up to Deku because they're the traitors and they feel guilty because they're helping to stop Deku. That's such a great thing, right? It's Horikoshi flexing that writing skill. Such great foreshadowing and keeping it mysterious too at the same time. I love it. But yeah, Bakugo's whole apology. My shipper heart could not be more full. They animated that so damn good. I've been trying not to say the fortress because it's going to be lifting up off the ground. I've been trying not to make it a thing. So I'm hopefully not going to say anything in the next episode because that's a spoiler. So, but this episode was so good. Such a good episode. I wanted to bring out those 2 little things that I noticed and talk about them, but I'm honestly really excited to see everybody's comments down below. What you all thought of this episode. It was pretty darn good. So there's that. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, if you can believe it, next week we will have the season finale of My Hero Academia. I'll see y'all then, guys. Bye.